Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mental Health Experience. Today, we're going to talk about something that I have struggled with for a very long time, and I'm just getting to a point in my life to where I am becoming more accepting of the reality and the rational beliefs revolving around having difficult conversations. I think this is a really important topic to cover because we are living in this time period of cancel culture and so on and so forth. And usually for these types of videos, I don't write anything down, but this time I have actually some brainstorming down because there are some things I do want to talk about specifically, so I did write them down. So we're going to talk about the dangers of cancel culture, and everything I always talk about always comes back to the teachings of Dr. Albert Ellis, who, as I said in a previous video, is now considered the #1 most influential person in psychotherapy. He's now above Sigmund Freud, who did psychoanalytics and looked into the past and saying that people's past was the reason why, the primary reason on why they are emotionally distressed and so forth. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this utopia fantasy that a lot of people believe in. Because cosmic force and universal law, deservingness and fairness, cannot be proven or falsified through scientific realms or hypothesis, it is not considered in the realm of rational thinking. This is okay. There's nothing wrong with having faith. I'm just saying that, believing in these things, that life is fair, we have been shown time and time again that life is not fair and that certain people may work extremely hard and they don't become successful, which shows that they don't deserve to be successful. And this is a huge reason, as Dr. Albert Ellis said, for the majority of people's emotional distress. So it is important to talk about that. I do want to say that I do think it would be nice if everything was fair all the time and that people did respect each other and that there was no such thing as bullying and that there was no such thing as racism. And it is nice to strive towards decreasing these unhealthy behaviors, but to have an idea that people must change and that this is always, it's going to go away and it will be this utopia world is not rational, and that's okay. That's why changing your internal environment is a lot more important than changing your external environment. And what do I mean by that? I mean, not yelling at people saying you must change to fit my needs, but being uncomfortable with something because someone said something you didn't agree with. That's completely fine. Nobody has to say things that you agree with. That's a huge misconception we have in all sorts of realms: healthcare, political, money, religion, and so forth. People are so concerned with getting other people to do what they want them to do that actually turns out to this really bad cycle that isn't good. So the basis of this, in one of the #1 teachings of Dr. Albert Ellis, is unconditional other acceptance, which for me is a lot harder than unconditional self-acceptance. So humans have a couple things. Humans naturally want to stay alive and they want to naturally be happy for the most part. And humans are fallible, which means humans make mistakes. That's why perfectionism is an irrational belief. To think that everything is going to go your way and be perfect is just not real. And time and time again, as we've been shown that. So other people are fallible. There actually is no such thing as a good or bad person, but we have all been brought up with this: good and bad people. The human complex is the human personality and everything involved in everything we do is way too good to say that that person is entirely good or entirely bad. Dr. Albert Ellis even uses crazy examples such as Hitler and Stalin. There were people that loved Hitler, which means he had neutral and good acts, which doesn't mean he's entirely bad. The majority of the things he did were pretty terrible and horrific acts that we could all agree on. But to say that he is entirely bad is not rational to the teachings of cognitive behavioral therapy through Dr. Albert Ellis. So unconditional other acceptance is not agreement, which is completely different. You don't have to agree with people, but understanding that they are allowed as a human to have their beliefs and their rights. And just because you don't agree with them, doesn't mean you have to write them off because it doesn't teach you anything. And we're going to talk about the neurology of this too, which I think is very important with fear and avoidance. But, people are going to have different opinions from you. And if you're always running from them, that's not the best option. So what happens when you avoid things? When you avoid things and when you have fear of conversations, with people who disagree with you, you basically set up this alert system in your brain. And there's a lot of different areas that are involved. They know your prefrontal cortex is involved, executive decision. They know your amygdala is involved. I always say that word wrong. They know that different neurotransmitters are involved, whether it be glutamate, whether it be GABA, whether it be norepinephrine, epinephrine, serotonin, dopamine. They know there's a lot of different things going on. And when you fire these synapses because you want to avoid something all the time, when you get put into a situation like that, over time, that situation becomes heightened. That's actually the neurology of why people become very, very weird about having certain conversations. You're training your brain that there is a problem. And you're also not learning grit. So there's a lot of different, it's a multifactorial approach. So going back to grit, building that grit, the ability to have difficult conversations is a life skill that basically has it doesn't have any negative effects. So it's a complete ROI on your life, return on your investment in the business sense. So being able to have difficult conversations is the reality of life. Thinking that everyone is going to say something that you agree with is not real and will never be real. It would be nice if we all agreed with each other, but the reality is it's not how life works. It's not how it's been shown to work. So being able to have these difficult conversations is a gigantic factor when it comes down to actually going throughout life and be able to handling these unfair circumstances and life happenings. And this goes back to other videos I've done on certainty. Certainty is absurd. There's no such thing as certainty. You can plan for things, but that doesn't mean you're guaranteed them or that they're going to happen. So again, not everyone is supposed to agree with you. This is again in the rational belief, thinking that people, usually what Dr. Elvis talks about is, musts, shoulds, and oughts. People must agree with me. And then when you just start to dispute that, why must people agree with me? There is no law that says people need to agree with me. It's only in our silly heads that people have to agree with you. Nobody has to respect you. It would be nice if people respected you, but nobody has to respect you. Because there's people that aren't respected their whole entire lives. And again, going back to the fairness and deservingness. So again, when we talk about fairness and deservingness from the perspective of cognitive behavioral, changes, that would mean, again, that there is a cosmic force or universal law that dictates fairness and deservingness for everyone. And there's so many examples where this isn't true. There are murderers who are never caught. There are people that get away with terrible crimes that are never caught and never put to justice. We have laws in place to protect humans for the better of mankind, but they're not absolutes. Because if they were, everyone who did something wrong would be caught, or everyone would view something a certain way. And this is not reality, but this is a huge cause of a lot of people's watching this emotional distress or why they complain and so forth. So remember, it's not that it might be real, but because it cannot be proven or falsified, it is not in the realm of scientific nature, which means it doesn't have a rational basis. This is the whole teaching that Albert Ellis did over 70 years and why he is now considered the #1 psychotherapist on earth. This is really important. So again, unconditional other acceptance is something that striving towards has a lot of healthy benefits. Most people are too quick to turn people off when they don't agree with them. I did this my whole entire life, and it really was bad because then when I didn't even know how to have a constructive conversation because I would just say, this person's an idiot. And it doesn't make any sense. Just because they might have one act that you think is idiotic, it does not mean they're an idiot. And to go into this, to give you an example of how society is very irrational, when someone is a good musician, they say that person's a good person. They attach their self-worth to that. This is why you see a lot of people get really, really depressed when careers go down. It's because they attach their self-worth to what they're doing. The rational way is they are a person who is good at acting, not they are a good actor. They are a person who is good at acting. It's a very small difference, but it goes a long way when you practice this. Because when you are no longer an actor, or you no longer have good looks, or you no longer are a good singer, you are just now a person who no longer is a good singer. You don't put your whole entire self-worth on it. That is a gigantic mistake that 99.999% of humans make, including myself, up until very recently when I started studying the works of Dr. Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, which comes from Stoicism, from the Greek and Roman philosophers. So this stuff is really important, and I think that if you are in a situation like anything, so ERP, exposure response prevention, is one of the gold standards for OCD recovery. It's not the only thing that's needed. A lot of people think it is, but this is a very good technique for all sorts of areas of life. Because when you become fearful of something, like I said, you create those synapses in your brain and they also become heightened. And the response mechanism is maladaptive. So if you are afraid of something or you don't want to do it, guess what? Exposing yourself gradedly over a period of time, having difficult conversations. It's not going to come easy and it's not going to come overnight. This is really, really important for progressing yourself in an area that's positive and progressing yourself in an area where you can learn new things. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.